Okay, so we're diving into 28 Days Later, huh? A movie that, well, it really kind of redefined what a zombie movie could be. And from what I'm seeing from your notes here, it's not just about the scares, right? This one gets under your skin.
It's true. And, that's what makes this film so fascinating. This one really tapped into some real anxieties. I'm talking about pandemics, about science going off the rails a little bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, it scared the pants off of everyone at the same time.
Totally. I mean, you get thrown right into it, this virus turning people into, well, I don't even know if I can call them zombies.
Yeah, it's a whole debate.
Yeah.
Infected, undead. The lines get blurry. One of your sources actually made a good point about this, that 28 Days Later really kind of threw a wrench into the whole zombie genre.
Right. Because before this, zombies were, I don't know, how do I put this? Slow. You could outrun them, at least in theory. This movie, though, made it way more intense. You were running the second things went sideways.
Exactly. It's that speed that really gets you. This wasn't about being gross out scary. It was pure animalistic threat. And you see it everywhere after this movie. World War Z. Even video games like Left 4 Dead. That whole frantic, desperate fight to survive. Danny Boyle practically invented that.
I love that you brought up Boyle because your sources really get into this debate. Are these infected even zombies? For some people, it's practically a philosophical question. Undead versus, like, supercharged rage monsters. Where's the line?
And the distinction does matter. See, the classic Romero zombie that's undead, back from the grave. But the infected in this, they're alive, their bodies are just completely hijacked. It's still life, just completely warped by this virus, which, let's be honest, is terrifying in a whole different way. And that goes back to what Boyle was doing here. This wasn't just about making another zombie flick. It was about what if science, what if our desire to control everything backfires in the worst way?
And that's where things get really creepy, right? Because it's not just monsters and gore, it's tapping into this primal fear we all have. Like, what if everything we rely on just crumbles?
One of your sources pointed out the whole mad cow thing happening around the time this movie came out, and that always stuck with me, how vulnerable we can be. Oh, for sure. 28 Days Later really nailed that feeling, the whole what if a pandemic just rewrites the rules thing. And it wasn't just mad cow. SARS was another big one. Suddenly this idea of a virus jumping from animals to humans, causing a global freakout. It wasn't just movie stuff anymore.
It's true. And one article I was reading even argued that the fear is even more relevant today. Lab leak theories, genetic engineering debates, all that. It's like this movie was ahead of its time or something.
Totally. And that's what makes it more than just a horror movie. It forces us to ask these big, uncomfortable questions. How far is too far with science? Where's the line when it comes to risk? It's stuff we're still dealing with. And honestly, it's kind of eerie how spot on the movie was.
One source called it a meditation on the human condition, which I thought was really smart. And for me, that comes strongest in how society falls apart, and not always because of the infected. It's like people turn on each other. What do you think about that? Especially that whole thing with the soldiers.
Oh man, the soldiers. That's where it gets really interesting, because they're almost a different kind of horror. The infected, they're driven by pure instinct, but the soldiers, they're still human. They still can make choices, and the choices they make, super messed up. It makes you wonder who the real monsters are.
It's true. That whole part of the movie just sits wrong with you. That whole descent into cruelty, how power just warps people. And the thing is, it's not like it's some outside force. It's like the movie saying that capacity for darkness is already inside us, just waiting for the right moment.
Yeah, and that's a really, really disturbing thought. The film doesn't shy away from that, from showing how fragile our morals can be.
Yeah.
And that's scary on a whole other level.
Which I think leads perfectly into another thing. Your sources were really into how this movie looks. It's not just what they're saying, it's that whole vibe, those empty London streets. Man, it's like the city's holding its breath, bracing for something awful.
And Danny Boyle was really pushing the limits of how you can shoot a movie back then. I'm talking those early digital cameras, giving this raw, almost documentary feel.
Which, of course, makes it scarier, right? Because it's not some slick Hollywood apocalypse. It feels real, like it could actually happen.
100%. And the way it looks actually ties right back into the themes. That feeling of this is happening now, things unraveling fast. It's how we all feel about pandemics, like how fragile everything is.
And it's not just the empty streets. One article I found, that this one really got me thinking, it talked about how that whole raw found footage style, it actually plays into this whole other level of distrust the movie's got going on.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. 28 Days Later really gets at this deep down uneasiness we have about, well, institutions in general,
Mm.
especially when we're talking about science moving fast, biohazards, all that. It makes you wonder, who's really calling the shots here, and what are they willing to do?
Right, because it's like, on one hand, we need those institutions, right, to keep us safe, to come up with answers. But then there's that other side, that little voice saying, what if they're the problem?
Hmm. And the film plays with that brilliantly. Doesn't give you these easy answers, these mustache-twirling villains. Even the scientists who, made the virus, they're not evil geniuses, just people who screwed up massively. And that's almost scarier because it feels real, like a cautionary tale. Even with good intentions, things can go very, very wrong.
And one of these articles even brought up that real-life place, Porton Down, over in England. Super secretive, rumors of all kinds of crazy experiments with nasty stuff. Who knows what's true, but it plays into that fear, What's happening behind closed doors that we're not supposed to know about.
100%. And that's not just an England thing either. It's global. History's full of examples of, scientific progress being used for some pretty messed up stuff. And 28 days later, it digs into that fear that maybe we're not getting the full story, that the people in charge, maybe they're not the good guys.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive into 28 Days Later, it's obvious this isn't just some zombie flick. It's holding a mirror up to US, to our anxieties about science, pandemics, all of it.
It sticks with you, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about safety, about progress, even about what it means to be human in the first place.
It really does. So, to everyone listening, does 28 Days Later feel like a warning to you, a prophecy maybe, or just a terrifying what if? That's something to chew on. This has been a fascinating deep dive. Thanks for choosing such thought-provoking material. And until next time, keep exploring those big questions.